You say you want love, connection, trust, but every time someone gets close, you pull away. You convince yourself they were never right for you. You pick at flaws that didn't bother you before. You start feeling suffocated even by someone who gave you space. And before you know it, you've ghosted them, pushed them out, or quietly sabotaged the bond you claim to crave. Here's the thing, it's not just emotional self-sabotage. Carl Jung believed we all carry a hidden shadow self, a buried part of our psyche that holds the parts of us we reject. That includes our fears of being known, of being vulnerable, of being seen. And when that shadow stays in the dark too long, it starts pulling the strings. What if your fear of losing people is actually a fear of being truly seen? And what if the more you push others away, the more you're avoiding the parts of yourself you can't face? Let's go there. Let's dive into the unsettling depths of why you, and so many of us, unconsciously destroy the connections we claim to need. You want to be loved, right? But something in you flinches when it actually happens. It's not obvious at first. You might even feel excitement, a rush, the dopamine high of someone seeing you. But then, slowly, a voice creeps in. They're going to leave. They're too good for you. They're going to hurt you, just like the others. And so, before they can do anything, you pull away. This isn't a weakness. It's protection. Your mind isn't irrational. It's rehearsed. Because somewhere back in your timeline, your nervous system learned a terrifying lesson. Love is not safe. It starts earlier than you think. Most of us think trauma means violence, abuse, neglect, the big stuff. But psychology now tells us that some of the most deeply rooted attachment wounds aren't caused by what was done to us, but what wasn't. Like the parent who fed you, clothed you, but never really saw you. Or the caregiver who was physically present, but emotionally absent. Maybe they were stressed, distracted, or emotionally cold. Not cruel, just distant. In these environments, a child learns a silent rule. If I show who I am, I won't get love. Or worse, I'm only loved when I'm not a burden. So you adapt. You become the easy child, the perfectionist, the overachiever. You hide your needs because they were never really welcomed. And here's the cruel twist. When you grow up, those same patterns follow you, and they haunt your relationships. The wound hides but controls everything. Psychologist Dr. Gabor Mate says, the essence of trauma is disconnection from the self. When you're disconnected from yourself, you're constantly scanning the world for signs of rejection, even where there are none. Someone texts you a few hours late, they're losing interest. Someone needs space, they're pulling away. Someone loves you too much, they're lying. They'll leave when they really see me. You see threats in peace, danger in closeness, not because people are untrustworthy, but because your brain is wired to expect pain. That wiring isn't a flaw. It's a survival mechanism. But what once protected you as a child is now pushing away the very thing you want most. Why emotional intimacy feels like exposure. Here's where it gets darker and more revealing. According to attachment theory, our earliest caregivers form our blueprint for all future connections. If love meant anxiety, inconsistency, or pressure, then calm love feels unfamiliar. And the unfamiliar feels unsafe. When someone truly accepts you, no conditions, no games, it triggers a deep, unsettling feeling. Not because they're dangerous, but because your nervous system doesn't recognize it as normal. Feels fake. Feels suspicious. You want to believe it, but your unconscious mind starts poking holes. What do they really want from me? Why are they being so nice? They'll change. Just wait. So what do? You test them. You withdraw. You find flaws. You push until they leave. And in that moment, twisted as it sounds, you feel relief. Not because you wanted them gone, but because the fear of abandonment is finally resolved. You were right all along. They left, just like you thought. But you don't see that it wasn't them. It was the wound. The body remembers even if your mind forgets, your body doesn't. When you were a child, your nervous system developed in response to your environment. If love came with conditions, your brain released stress hormones around attachment. Over time, your body began to associate closeness with danger. This is why your heart races during arguments, even when nothing's truly at stake. Why you feel suffocated in relationships, even if your partner is kind. Why part of you wants to scream, "Get away from me." The moment things start feeling too real, you're not broken. You're carrying a map, written in the language of survival. Why you may confuse drama with love. Let's go even deeper. If your early environment was chaotic, where love was unpredictable or you had to earn attention, your nervous system adapted to intensity. As a result, calm love doesn't feel romantic. Feels boring. You crave emotional highs. The dramatic texts, the fights, the chases, because they match the emotional turbulence you were raised in. It's not that you want pain. It's that pain feels like home. So, even though you say you want peace, you're drawn to people who stir anxiety, who feel familiar in their unpredictability. And when someone stable enters your life, your mind starts inventing problems. Not because there are any, but because your nervous system can't sit still in safety. What this all means by now, you might be realizing something uncomfortable. Pushing people away isn't a sign that you don't care. It's a sign that somewhere deep in your story, love became tangled with fear. Maybe no one taught you that you could be loved without performing, without hiding, without shrinking. But here's the truth. You can't receive real love until you stop running from it. And you can't stop running until you understand why you do. That's what this journey is about. Not just knowing the wound, but uncovering the shadow that feeds it. So far, we've talked about wounds, the hidden emotional injuries that make intimacy feel like a threat. But now we go deeper, into the parts of you that don't just react to pain. They cause it. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of your psyche that holds everything you've tried to hide, deny, or reject about yourself. And here's where it gets unnerving. The shadow isn't just made of your bad traits. It's made of the traits you never got permission to express. Your vulnerability, your need for love, your anger, your fear, even your desire to be truly seen. You buried these things to survive, but they didn't die. They learned how to manipulate you from the dark. You are not who you think you are. Every day you operate from your persona, the mask you wear to function in society. Is who you think you are. The person you want others to see. Confident, independent, funny, chill, in control. But that's not the full story. The more you build up the mask, the more you repress what doesn't fit. And what gets pushed into the shadow doesn't go away, it gets louder. That's when things start to feel out of control. You tell yourself you're emotionally strong, but you crumble at rejection. You say you're chill, but explode over small things. You tell people you don't care about relationships, and yet feel devastated when they leave. These contradictions aren't random. They're the shadow's fingerprints. The shadow sabotages in whispers, not screams. Unlike obvious destructive behavior, the shadow works subtly. It turns love into a threat and connection into a game. You start to chase unavailable people because true intimacy terrifies you. Attract partners with the very flaws you claim to hate. Sabotage peace because chaos feels like home. Blame others for needs you've never clearly expressed. Here's a brutal truth. The people you attract often mirror the parts of yourself you've disowned. If you've buried your neediness, you'll attract someone emotionally distant to replay the cycle. If you've rejected your anger, you might fall for someone who acts it out for you and blame them every time it erupts. This is shadow work in action. You externalize what you cannot face internally. Jung's terrifying insight: the shadow will control you unless you face it. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Think about that. You'll keep repeating the same relationship patterns, same highs, same betrayals, same exits, and believe it's just your luck. But it's not luck. It's programming. And the only way to break the loop is to shine a light on the shadow, to see what you've been running from. Shadow traits that quietly destroy relationships. Let's break it down even further. Here are just a few shadow traits that can push people away, even when you think you want to connect. Hyperindependence, not strength but fear of depending on anyone. Perfectionism, not high standards but terror of being judged. Sarcasm and detachment, not wit but emotional armor. Control issues, not leadership but anxiety masking vulnerability. Jealousy or paranoia, not passion, but deep insecurity and fear of being unworthy. You may not recognize these as shadow traits because your mind has found ways to justify them. But your relationships have felt their impact. And the more you deny them, the more power they have over you. Why facing the shadow feels like dying. Here's why most people never face their shadow. Because doing so requires admitting that the version of you that you've carefully built isn't the full truth. And that's terrifying. To let go of the persona, even for a moment, feels like losing control, like falling into the abyss, like being naked in front of the world without armor. But here's the paradox. The shadow isn't your enemy. It holds the truth of who you are, your unmet needs, your capacity for real love, your emotional power, your deepest fears, and your most profound desires. The parts you rejected are the parts you need to become whole. The shadow's favorite disguise. Self-sabotage. Here's the most sinister part. The shadow doesn't destroy your relationships all at once. It chips away at them through tiny, quiet betrayals. A text you didn't reply to because you wanted to feel in control. A compliment you dismissed because part of you didn't feel worthy. A kind gesture you questioned because you thought it came with strings. A good person you ghosted because their love felt too real. And each time, you tell yourself it just didn't work. But beneath that excuse, the shadow was pulling the strings. What you can't own, you can't heal. You can't build healthy love on top of a buried self. So ask yourself, and really sit with it, what part of me do I hide when someone gets close? What qualities in others trigger me the most, and why? What am I terrified they'll see if they really get to know me? These aren't light questions. But this isn't a light topic. Shadow work isn't about fixing yourself. It's about finding the parts you exiled and choosing to bring them back into the light. Only then can you build something real, not just with others but with yourself. And once you've started to see the shadow, you begin to see the cycle it traps you in. You text them first. You open up. You flirt, laugh, maybe even share something vulnerable. Then suddenly, they text you back with the same energy, maybe more. And that's when it hits you. Not joy, not relief, but discomfort, anxiety, a tightening in your chest. You feel like something's wrong. You can't explain it, but now that they're fully in, something in you wants out. So you back off, ghost a little, get cold, pick a fight. And then when they pull away, you panic. You chase again. Welcome to the push-pull dynamic, one of the most psychologically exhausting cycles in modern relationships. And here's the darkest part. The more intense the pattern, the more likely it feels like love. Why the cycle starts with attraction at first glance. Push-pull relationships look passionate, magnetic, even romantic. Two people drawn to each other like opposites, sparks flying, chemistry thick. But what's really happening? Psychologists call it the anxious avoidant trap, a dynamic where one person craves closeness but fears abandonment, anxious, while the other fears intimacy and craves independence, avoidant. These roles may switch or blend, but the loop stays the same. The anxious partner pushes for closeness, the avoidant partner feels overwhelmed, the avoidant partner pulls away, the anxious partner feels rejected and panics, the anxious partner chases, the avoidant partner returns, but not fully repeat. Each person is activating the other's deepest fear. Each is playing out an old wound, trying to rewrite their history, but instead of healing, they reenact pain. Why you push when things get real? Let's talk about the avoider. Maybe that's been you. You're all in at first. Attentive, charming, curious. Then out of nowhere a wall goes up. They didn't do anything wrong. In fact, they're probably being kind. And yet, you feel trapped, irritated by their presence, confused by your own lack of desire, suspicious of their intentions. This isn't because you're over it. It's because the intimacy reached a threshold, and that threshold bumped into your unconscious fear of exposure. See, avoidant attachment isn't about disliking love. It's about associating closeness with danger. When someone starts to really see you, your flaws, your needs, your insecurities, it threatens the identity you built to survive. So you do what your nervous system learned to do, create distance. Maybe by ghosting, maybe by nitpicking, maybe by convincing yourself they were never right in the first place. You leave before they can leave you. Why you pull when they withdraw now, let's flip it. Maybe you're the one who gets anxious. You try to play it cool, but when they start pulling away, something inside you breaks. You feel abandoned. You blame yourself. You replay every interaction trying to find what you did wrong. You text, call, wait, spiral. It's not because you're needy. It's because your nervous system sees distance as rejection, and rejection as danger. The anxious mind is wired to fix, to cling, to resolve the disconnection. But every time the avoidant partner returns, you calm down briefly. Then the cycle restarts. Over time, both people feel emotionally exhausted, yet can't let go. Because even though the pattern hurts, the fear of being alone feels worse. Why your trauma bonds feel like chemistry. Here's a brutal realization. That spark you feel, the one you call chemistry, it might not be an attraction. It might be a familiar pain. Your body recognizes the emotional chaos, the highs and lows, the chase, the distance. It mirrors the emotional environment you were raised in, inconsistent, confusing, unstable. That's why calm, stable love feels boring. Because your brain doesn't release the same cocktail of stress hormones. It doesn't feel like survival. And for people trapped in push-pull cycles, survival feels like love. Why the cycle is so hard to break. This isn't just emotional. It's chemical. Every push and pull releases a surge of cortisol, dopamine, adrenaline, creating a literal addiction to the relationship drama. The body starts to crave the uncertainty, the reconciliation, the dopamine spike of being chosen again. But each time, the emotional damage runs deeper. The highs get higher, the lows get lower, and both people feel stuck. Not because they're broken, but because their unresolved wounds are locked in a psychological tug-of-war. You might think you're different, but ask yourself, do you get bored when someone is too available? Do you feel drawn to people who make you chase them? Do you find ways to sabotage closeness once it gets real? Do you crave peace, yet always find yourself in emotional chaos? These aren't just relationship quirks. They're patterns, psychological defenses, echoes of your attachment style, your shadow, and your unresolved wounds. And until you name them, you'll keep repeating them no matter who you date. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. Here's what hurts. You can't heal in the same environment that broke you. And yet, your brain will keep leading you back to it, not to suffer, but to resolve, to rewrite the story, to finally win the love you never got. But it doesn't work like that. Because as long as the pattern is unconscious, the ending will always be the same. Breaking the push-pull pattern, the only way out is into your own emotional reactions, into the parts of you that fear peace, into the wounds that push people away or chase what's unavailable, into the discomfort of being still with no drama, no test, no panic. When you stop craving intensity, when you stop needing to earn love, when you can sit with someone's calm affection and not run, that's when the cycle breaks. But most people never get there, because the moment they try, the shadow fights back. Theory is safe. It's one thing to talk about the shadow, attachment styles, childhood wounds, but when those invisible forces start playing out in real life, the damage isn't theoretical, it's devastating. Let's step into the real world now. Into stories of people who pushed love away without knowing why, and didn't realize the cost until it was too late. Case Study 1. The man who ghosted his own engagement. Ethan was 32. Successful, confident, emotionally intelligent, or so it seemed. He met Rachel through mutual friends. Within 6 months, they were inseparable. He said he'd never felt more safe with anyone. He proposed on a snowy night in December, tears in his eyes. And then, he disappeared. No warning, no fight, just gone. His phone went off. He deleted social media. He didn't show up for the engagement party. Rachel was shattered, humiliated. No explanation. 9 months later, he reached out, apologized, said he had a mental breakdown, that it had nothing to do with her. But privately, in therapy, Ethan confessed something chilling. I just felt this cold wave of dread after I proposed. She was everything I wanted, but something in me kept whispering, run. His therapist helped him trace it back to childhood. His father had left the family when Ethan was 6, the night after promising they'd go fishing. Ethan never saw him again. That night had taught him one unconscious lesson. Don't believe in love. It always leaves. So when he felt true connection again, deep, real, permanent, that 6-year-old voice screamed in terror. He didn't ghost Rachel because she failed him. He ghosted her because she got too close. His shadow made the decision before he even knew it. Case study 2. The woman who loved broken men. Jasmine was smart, grounded, a therapist even, and yet, every man she dated was emotionally unavailable, chaotic, or cruel. She told friends she just had a big heart, that she liked fixing people, that she couldn't help who she fell for. But during a session with her supervisor, something clicked. If you're always the one fixing, you never have to be seen. Jasmine froze, because deep down, she feared that if someone ever truly looked at her needs and all, they'd leave. So she kept choosing partners who were too broken to notice her. That way she could stay in control, feel needed, never risk rejection. Her trauma masked itself as compassion. She wasn't unlucky in love. She was protecting a childhood wound that said, if you show your needs, you'll be punished. Case study 3. The nice guy, who secretly hated women. Michael prided himself on being a good guy. Polite, romantic, always there. But his relationships kept ending the same way, with emotional explosions, cruel texts, or sudden breakups he couldn't explain. One of his exes told him bluntly, you act like you love women, but you actually hate us. At first, he was furious, then ashamed. In therapy, something surfaced. His mother had emotionally manipulated him his whole life. She weaponized guilt, tears, and silence. Told him no one would love him like she did. Criticized any girl he brought home. So Michael developed a nice guy persona. To win love, to avoid rejection, to survive. But beneath it, he resented women for how powerless he felt around them. His shadow, full of rage and fear, would eventually explode on the very people he tried to please. I didn't hate women, he said later. I hated how they made me feel, exposed. Case study 4. The couple who couldn't stop breaking up. Taylor and Sean were that couple. The on-again, off-again mess that everyone around them got tired of watching. They loved each other, no doubt, but the pattern was always the same. Taylor would pull back emotionally. Sean would panic and cling. Sean would accuse her of being cold. She'd accuse him of being needy. They'd break up. Then one would text at 2 a.m., I miss you. Back together. Repeat. They weren't immature. They weren't evil. They were two people whose traumas locked in like puzzle pieces. Taylor had grown up with a mother who weaponized love, used affection as a reward. Sean had grown up invisible, ignored until he made noise. Each of them was trying to heal a parent wound through their partner. And the damage? Years lost. Self-esteem eroded. Friends alienated. Therapy avoided. Their story didn't end in reconciliation. It ended in silence, but not peace. Because neither of them could admit the core truth. We didn't love each other. We were trying to survive each other. The cost of psychological sabotage. Here's the part no one tells you. Self-sabotage doesn't just ruin relationships. It rewires your belief system. Every time you push someone away, a voice inside you says, see, you're unlovable. Every time you chase someone who won't stay, it whispers, this is all you deserve. Every failed cycle builds a wall of confirmation bias. You're broken. People can't be trusted. Love is pain. And slowly you stop trying. Or worse, you settle for half love because it feels safer than the risk of real connection. But here's the thing. The pain you're trying to avoid is already inside you. and running from it only spreads it to the people around you. But it doesn't have to end this way. The people in these stories weren't doomed. But they needed something most people never allow themselves, to face the parts of themselves they were ashamed of. The anger, the fear, the need, the grief. To stop blaming others for wounds they hadn't treated. Because that's the only path to real healing. And in the next chapter we'll go there step by step. You'll learn what it actually takes to stop pushing people away. Not by becoming someone else, but by finally becoming whole. You can only run from yourself for so long. Eventually, the masks crack. The personas you built to feel safe, the independent one, the chill one, the I don't need anyone one, start to feel hollow. Maybe you've seen this already, the pattern repeating. A good connection, hope, then tension, withdrawal, coldness, guilt, regret, and silence. You keep asking yourself, why do I ruin the good things? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the question is, which part of me believes I don't deserve good things? The truth is, your shadow doesn't hate love. It fears it. Carl Jung didn't believe in getting rid of the shadow. He believed in integration, facing the parts of ourselves we've hidden, judged, or exiled, and making peace with them. Because your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your wounded protector. It's the 7-year-old you who decided, it's safer not to need anyone. It's the teenager who learned that vulnerability equals weakness. It's the adult version of you who says, I'm fine alone, but craves someone to see through the lie. Integration isn't spiritual fluff. It's psychological warfare against your own numbness. So how do you start? 1. Track the pattern in brutal detail. This step is non-negotiable. Start a log of your self-sabotage. Write down, when you start getting uncomfortable in a connection. What triggers it? Do they compliment you? Start depending on you? Say, I love you? How do you react? Withdrawal, criticism, stonewalling, ghosting. You're not doing this to shame yourself, you're doing this to map the machine. Because you can't dismantle what you haven't seen. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung 2. Uncover the core fear beneath the reaction. Ask yourself, if I fully let this person love me, what's the worst that could happen? What belief would be proven wrong if this worked out? You'll find answers like, they'll leave anyway, and it'll hurt more. They'll find out who I really am. They'll expect too much. I'll become weak, dependent, exposed. These aren't surface thoughts. These are emotional truths buried deep in your body. The nervous system doesn't just think these things. It remembers them. 3. Feel what you've been avoiding. This is the part most people skip. Not a journal. Not meditate. Feel. Feel the terror of being seen and not accepted. Feel the ache of not being held when you needed it most. Feel the grief of the connections you destroyed. Sit in it. This is where you stop intellectualizing your pain and start metabolizing it. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Roomy, but the wound must be touched first. 4. Reparent the shadow. In the moment next time you're about to sabotage something good, pause, take a breath, and say to yourself, I know this part of me thinks love is unsafe. I see you. But I don't need to run anymore. Give your shadow what it always wanted. Not dominance, not exile, but understanding. This takes practice. You'll mess up, but every time you catch the pattern in motion, you chip away at it. 5. Let yourself be seen. Imperfectly. Start small. Let someone know when you feel off, when you're insecure, when you're scared. You're not looking for perfection. You're looking for proof that vulnerability doesn't equal death. Every time you let someone in and survive, the shadow loses a bit of its grip. 6. Expect the panic, and stay anyway. Rewiring your brain to accept love feels like panic, like suffocation, like you want to run. That's the nervous system detoxing the past. It's normal. It's not a sign to flee. This is where you become someone new, not by feeling ready, but by staying anyway. 7. When needed, choose solitude intentionally, not reactively. Sometimes you do need distance. But there's a difference between, I need time to process and regulate myself. Healthy solitude versus I'm shutting down because I'm scared and ashamed. Fear-based isolation. Be honest with yourself. Don't call it boundaries if it's actually a cage. You won't fix this overnight. You won't heal and never feel the fear again. But you can interrupt the script. You can choose different. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start letting people see you. Not the perfect version. Not the curated self. Just you. And when you're loved there, in the mess, in the realness, it rewires everything. That's how the shadow transforms. That's how the war ends. Not by fighting it, but by holding its hand and walking back into the light. Together. If this hit somewhere deep, if you recognized yourself in these patterns, you're not broken. You're protecting yourself the only way you knew how. But now you know more. And when you know more, you can do better. Hit that subscribe. Share this with someone who's stuck in the same loop. And remember, your fear of being loved doesn't make you unlovable. It just makes you human. And humans can heal.